Thank you, brother. All yours.
Let us begin with a short prayer to give thanks for this opportunity. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Gajananam Bhuta Ganadi Sebidam Kavitta Jambho Balasara Bakshitham Umasudam Soka Vinashakaranam Namami Vigneshwara Pada Pankajam Om Ramanujadaya Patram Jnana Vairagya Bhushanam Srimad Venkatanarthayam Vande Vedanta Deshikam Sada Shiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Parampara Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Narayanarpanamastu. Suswagatam, Namo Namaha, welcome. Firstly, my thanks to Region 3 and Region 2 for jointly organizing this, as it is one of the most magnificent and enthralling works of the great Bhagavad Sri Adi Shankara. And it's a wonderful opportunity for me to share with you some of the inner significance or messages that lie behind this great work, which is, a fixed reality, if you want to look at it that way, right? So you need a sharp vision to pierce through the veil of Maya to see what actually was meant. So I first want to clarify that this is not a session where I actually teach you how to chant the slokas, right? This is not a chanting session. So obviously I will chant them in order to tell you, what they mean or what their inner significance is. But rather, the aim of this session in the next 10 weeks is for me to try and attempt to inculcate an understanding or a basic working knowledge of this magnificent work. So what you should be expecting, this is called managing expectations, right, is not in this 1 hour for you to expect me to teach you correct pronunciation, intonation, all of that. Now, if there is obviously a lot of support, a lot of interest, a lot of enthusiasm with regards to learning the shlokas, then please email the regional team so that they can look into the possibility of arranging separate sessions for that. But this is basically for me to talk about the Bhaja Govindam and to tell you what actually was the message that Shankara wanted to impart to the masses. So understanding and obviously applying that understanding is what we are looking at to do in these sessions. So thank you very much to Regions 2 and 3 for giving me this opportunity, and thank you to every single one of you for coming on board, because this clearly shows that you have a burning yearning to learn and hopefully to apply what you learn with regards to the great Bhaja Govindam. So usually, just as you would do with many topics, before you actually talk about the topics, you would give some form of background. So I think it is pertinent for me to talk about a little bit about the history and background of Sri Adi Shankaracharya. Now, if you look at the two main sects of Hinduism, you have the Vaishnavism and you have the Saivism. And of course, there are many, many books, almanacs, what we call resources, where, an immense amount of knowledge has been handed down through the two great avatars of the Vishnu avatar and of course the Shiva avatar. So the great acharyas have come in both lineages, right? The Vishnu Vaishnava and the Shiva Shaiva. So if you take the Vishnu avatar, then the great Vedavyasa or Vyasacharya comes to mind, and he is known for minimization. So he will take anything that is, gross, and he will minimize it. And these are called Vedanta Sutras, right? So Vyasacharya, Vishnu avatar, known for minimization, These are called Vedanta Sutras. Then, of course, Shiva avatar, you have Shankaracharya. Now, he is known for maximization. He will take anything and give it to you as an ocean. And his works are referred to as Vedanta Bhashyas. So, when was Shankara born? Right? Shankara was born back in the 788 CE in a place called Kaladi. Present day, it's Kerala, southwest India. His parents were Nambodri Brahmins. His father was called Sivaguru and his mother was called Aryamba. Now, for many years, they did not have a child and they prayed. They prayed earnestly and honestly to Lord Shiva. And one day, Lord Shiva appeared before them in front of Sivaguru and Aryamba. And he asked them, I'm going to grant your wish, but I will give you a choice. You see, this is the basis of spiritual evolution and spiritual progress and spiritual development, right? God will never give you a straight answer, but he will put the choice in front of you. That's exactly what Krishna did throughout the Mahabharata, right? If you've gone through the Mahabharata, you'll know. He always never gave an answer, but he gave the choice, right? So similarly, Lord Shiva said, I can give you one of two, right? Either you get a son who has a limited life in terms of, lifespan, but his knowledge will be limitless and he will be remembered, for centuries to come. Or I can give you a son who has a long life, but very dull, below average. Choose. So Sivaguru and Aryamba looked at each other and they both spoke simultaneously at the same time saying, give us the one who is going to be a jnani, the one with the short life, right? Because they were so desperate for a child and they wanted to spend their time and they were also getting on. So Shiva said, Tatastu, and of course, Shankara was born after that. Now, what is Shankaracharya's philosophy? His philosophy is Advaitam Vedanta, right? Vedanta means at the end of this knowledge called Veda, or the books that are called the Vedas, right? What is it? Vedanta. So he says Advaita is the end result of Vedanta. Advaita means Dvaitam is duality. Advaitam means non-duality or singularity. So his notion is at the end of the day, you must know where you're going, why you're going, right? And this life should be spent on how you're going to get there. Right? That is the basic philosophy. He's also the founder of the, obviously, Advaita Vedanta and Dashanami Sampradaya. Okay, and his guru, he has a guru called Govinda Bhagavat Pada, just like all, the great names that have come in the lineage of the Hindu philosophy. Right? Guru Govinda Bhagavat Pada was Adi Shankara's guru. At a very young age, he saw the great potential in him, and he, groomed him. Of course, lots of works of Adi Shankara that we can talk about, but I'm focusing today specifically on Bhaja Govindam. But he's also one of the great works is something called Upadesha Sahasrasi. Upadesha Sahasrasi. That means one who has the capacity to teach 1,000 things, and it's one of his most philosophical works. Now, how has he influenced the growth and spread of Hinduism? Because he was a key figure in obviously setting up his missions and his mutts. And of course, his underlying philosophy was the Vedas and the Upanishads. And you must know something called smartas. And this became later a subject of Hinduism, which was based on his teachings. Smartas basically is based on the Vedas. And this has got two divisions, right? This Smartism recognizes the existence of something called Sadguna Brahma and Nitguna Brahma. Sadguna is God with form, Nitguna is God without form. So if you want to take it at a representational level from a quality or value perspective, then Sadguna Brahman is something that relates to infinite nature, and looks at traits such as love, compassion, being equal, all of that. And Nitguna Brahma symbolizes pure consciousness, that Brahman, that creative principle which is the underlying basis of the Vedas. Now, Shankaracharya set up 4 mutts in, north, south, east, west, and one down in, Kanchipuram. So he set up one in the north called Badrika Ashram, Jyotit Peetham, and then one in the west called Sharada, Dwaraka Sharada Peetham, right? And then Govardhan Peetham in Puri in east, and then Sringeri Sharada Peetham in Karnataka. And then, of course, he spent his, last few years setting up the mutt, and from which became like a headquarters from where most of his teaching and philosophy were spread in Kanchi, Kanchi Peetham in Kanchipuram, which is about, 45 kilometers from Chennai, right? But one of the things that is that really fascinated me about Shankara was he was always referred to as Ekashrutidhara. Ekashrutidhara. That basically means one who can retain anything. You give him something, he will read and he will just remember it and he will quote. And he can also produce things just from thin air, as I will be telling you as we tread this path in the next few weeks. One of his most famous quotes I like is, he differentiates between knowing what the body is and how to use that body to get where you want to. It's like using a car to get from point A to B. You can't get attached to the car because the car has a particular duty to perform, a particular value, a particular quality. That is a quality you must understand, and you must treat that car with that sort of quality, with that sort of notion, with that sort of motion. He says, I know that I am different from the body, but I also know that I need not neglect the body. It is a vehicle that I need to use to transact with the world. It is a temple that houses the pure self within. So it is from this that the Rig Veda says, Deho Devalaya. That means the body is the temple of God, right? And Swami also says the body is the temple of God, so you need to maintain that. When did he die? He died when he was 32 years old. Now there is some conflict as to exact spot where he died. That's not an issue for us. Our issue is he has left us this great richness. So let us not waste time in exactly where he was born and where he left his mortal coils. But the story is, some say he died in Kanchipuram, and the majority of the information points to the fact that he died at Kedarnath when he went into a little cave to meditate, and they say he never came out. Some believe that he is still there, of course, spreading his influence in different ways. So coming now to Bhaja Govindam, right? Bhaja Govindam is divided into 2 sects, if you like. The first is called Dwadasha Manjarika. Dwadasha Manjarika Stotram. Dwadasha Manjarika Stotram. Dwadasha means 12. So it's a collection of 12 little flowers that has been made into a little garland. Okay. Plus the first stanza, which is the standard chorus stanza, the Bhaja Govindam, that one. So the first 13, they are referred to as Dwadasha Manjarika Stotram. And then, of course, he had 14 key disciples, and he obviously created 14 extra verses and dedicated one to each one of them. And there is some school of thought that also says that it was Shankara's, each of these disciples also came up with one. It doesn't matter, we are looking at the work itself, right? But of course, from a Guru-Shishya Parampara kind of relationship, the Shishyas never actually claim any credit. They're always dedicated to the Guru. Like, when we do things, we say, this is a dedication to Swami, this is an offering to Swami, it is not I, but thy, that kind of thing. So even if if we believe that it is each one of his 14 disciples are the ones who actually created the remaining 14 in the stotras, it is still dedicated to Shankara. So we can say it was created by Shankara. I mean, there's no clear evidence to prove the exact authorship, genuine individual authorship of these 14 verses, but it is dedicated to Adi Shankara all the same. Some say him, some say disciples, but all we have is what we say traditional hearsay, right? But The 14 that come after the first 12, which, as I said to you earlier, is Dvadasha Manjarika Stotram, is called Chaturdasha Manjarika Stotram. Chaturdasha means 14. So 12 plus 14 gives you 26. And Shankara added another 5 to make it 31, right? His own touch, finishing touches. So we have 31 stanzas or verses, and this is most often referred to as Moha Mudgara. Moha means the vasanas or desires. Mudgara means one that has the capacity to annihilate, destroy, obviate. What that means is, Moha Mudgara means a stomper of delusion and ignorance. That's how powerful it is referred to as. And Chinmayananda, Swami Chinmayananda always refers to that, right? Now, let's talk about the context in which Shankara has given this, going back at that time, when innocence was obviously more rampant than, non-innocence. So his words are like the words of a surgeon who uses a sharp, scalpel. So sharp that it cuts through your ignorance. And the knife goes into your heart of worldliness to take you out and removing this tumor of ignorance. Once this tumor is removed, then you are on the path of recovery towards bliss and grace. Govinda Anugraha, it's called, right? So this is also what is said in the Brihadaranya Upanishad, where, you say the prayer, Asat Thoma Satgamaya, lead me from the untruth to the truth. Tamastoma Jyotirgamam Mrityorma Mrudum. So we are looking at what is the actual truth and where we are. We are still at the untruth. So Shankara's Bhaja Govindam is like a bridge, right? So you tread this bridge, but of course it's a forward-moving journey. Once you start, you can't retract, right? Otherwise, your spiritual journey gets obviously, disturbed, right? So what is the value? People say, okay, he's come, he's said, he's given this and he's gone. What is the value in there for me, right? You see, one of the things that you should be looking at in your lives, in your individual lives, is what we call spiritual liberation, right? In Sanskrit, that's called mumukshatvam, mumukshatvam. So a study of this work, a gradual progression in the understanding and basic application of this work will lead you to inculcate a measure of dispassion and a great level of inner peace, right? It also clearly tells you the role of the spiritual guru and your role as the follower, as the disciple, as the devotee, as the bhakta, as the shishya, right? Tells you that you have to make your own journey. They are like, they will give you the satellite navigation coordinates, but you need to make that journey, right? It also explains to us how we spend a lot of time, or precious time and efforts, pursuing meaningless pursuits. It demonstrates, Bhaja Govindam demonstrates the absurdity of these meaningless pursuits and how much time and effort we spend, and of course, it also tells us if you engage in anything mechanical, whether it's a repetition of a mantra or doing ritualistic things, he says, there's no fruit. Bhaja Govindam brings to light the absolute fruitlessness of mechanical chanting and mechanical performance of rituals. They are there in order to teach you some discipline, right? So that you become something else as a result of engaging in this chanting, in these ritualistic practices, right? So there's a lot of, poetry in there, but at the same time, like I said, it should cut every slice is into the ignorance, Tamastoma Jyotirgamaya. It should take you from darkness to light. So let us look. Bhaja Govindam, very simply put, it's a lighthouse. Lighthouse is for ships on an ocean. So this lighthouse of Bhaja Govindam is a lighthouse that is giving us light where we tread. We are on the ship of life on the ocean of samsara. So this light is taking us from one journey to another journey, yet to another journey. Okay, so that now brings us to the first verse. How did this first verse take place? Where did it happen? When did it happen? Now, Shankara, in his travels, at a very young age, he left his house. But before he left his house in Kaladi, let me just explain what Kaladi means, right? Kaladi. Kal means feet or foot, if you like. Adi means base. So once his mother, after the passing of his father died when he was very young, about 4 or 5 he died. And when he was 8 or 9, his mother used to go every day to walk to a river, have her absolutions there, and then she used to come back and do a puja for Shiva. On 1 or 2 occasions, she actually fainted and she couldn't do that, and she was very upset. Now, Shankara, at that point, straight away, Shankara had the capacity to relate to the Parabrahman at the very instant of the thought. So there was no gap between his thought of Parabrahma and the communication, right? Whereas we will start to analyze and process the information, and before we actually begin the communication, he thinks and he does it, that's it. So he sang a hymn to goddess Ganga, and as a result of being extremely pleased with the genuinity and the ferventness in his chanting, Ganga diverted the river, right? It's called Pera River, right? From which now if you know of Kerala, the Periyar Dam. It was somewhere around there. Diverted the river, so it flew just behind Shankara's house, where he always used to stand and do Surya Namaskar. So the water was flowing just under his feet. And that's why that place, after that, became known as Kaladi, because even Ganga moved itself and rerouted itself so that it can flow under the feet of Shankara. So his mother was blessed with that gift of having, the Nadi Sagara in front, at the back of her house. So she did her snanam, and she, of course, did her pujas. So Shankara has done many, many things like that, right? Instant communication with the Parabrahman. Not for himself. This is another thing. He has always done something for the benefit of other people. Right? Anyway, so he was in Kashi for a very long time. He spent a lot of time in Kashi, or Varanasi, as people know. Varanasi, right? How did it get the name Varanasi? The 2 rivers, Varan and Asi, and they were confluencing at a place where Ganga was flowing. So they merged into Ganga, and they flew, and of course they flew through this town. Hence it became known as Varanasi, right? Then it became known as Banaras, and of course now it's also Varanasi, or Kashi as it is known. So he was in Kashi, and he was going with his disciples when he saw one man learning the rules of grammar in order to sit for an exam, right? And he was learning, it's called Panini, right? He was learning it so intensely, and Shankara looked at him and instantly he burst out. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudamate, Samprapte Sannihite Kale, Nahi Rakshati Dukrin Karani, right? Bhaja Govindam, seek Govinda, Bhaja Govindam, serve Govinda, Govindam Bhaja Mudamate, seek and serve Govinda, oh you deluded fool. Samprapte Sannihite Kale, because when the appointed time of death comes, Sannihite Kale, Nahi Rakshati Dukrin Karani. All this material acquisition of knowledge, material acquisition of wealth, all this fame, nothing will come to your rescue. He says this to that man. The man, of course, was shocked, but this is how Shankara burst into it. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudamate, Samprapte Sannihite Kale, Nahi Rakshati Dukrin Karani. So he says, what are these sciences going to do for you? All that you have learned, all the books that you have read, will they save you when Lord Yama comes and knocks on your door and say, your time is up, you are coming with me? Says, no, they won't do. Even though you may be the greatest, most learned person, still Yama will not spare you on the basis of knowledge. But if you have the grace of Govinda, and that's why I'm saying, save yourself by supplicating to Govinda, then you have a chance. Nahi rakshati dukrin karne, all else will fail you, right? So you can actually relate this to one of the parts, the 4 parts that is, given to us, the path of bhakti, the path of karma, the path of jnana, and the path of dhyana, right? 4 yogas. So this is bhakti yoga, you can say. How you should inculcate bhakti and seek God and serve God in order for you to, at the end of the day, traverse, that void between the Bhuloka, the Bhuvaloka, and the Suvaloka. Very simply it is. So how can we do that? How do we do that? So bhakti must be pure, untainted, thoughtless, complete servitude. So if you look at what Swami has said, indeed, many times is referred to what is the easiest way to reach God, especially in this Kali Yuga. And Swami has often referred to this the concept of Navavida Bhakti. Navavida Bhakti means 9 different paths of devotion. And of course, he talks about Bhakti from a Shravanam point of view, just listening, Kirtanam point of view, singing, chanting, Smaranam, Vishnu Smaranam, that is complete immersion in what you hear and what you sing. And of course, there are 9 parts, right? And this is Bhakti Yoga. And a story to illustrate that in Shankara's own life is his disciples. Now, over a period of time, he had accumulated a few disciples, right? I mean, towards the end, he had 14 key disciples. But this story relates to one of them who joined, a bit later. His name was Sananda. Sananda was unlike the other disciples who were interested in learning, the knowledge and mechanically and whatnot. But Sananda was only interested in serving his guru. So he will do things that the other fellows are not doing, the other disciples are not doing. So Shankara always looked at him as someone who is, doing things the right way for the right reason, right? At the right time. So he was very dharmic in that sense. And Sananda, and of course, he showed, Sananda a lot of love and attention. Now, this obviously translated to not being fair, you are impartial with all the other disciples, So they began talking to themselves. And one day, Shankara was going with his disciples, and he looked around and he asked them, "Where is Sananda? Where has he gone?" And his disciples said, "Oh, Bhagavan, he's gone across that river to go and pick some flowers for your evening puja." So without a moment of hesitation, Shankara turned towards the river and shouted, "Sananda! Sananda!" And Sananda heard him because he was just across the river. And he dropped whatever he had in his hand, that basket of flowers he had. He dropped it and he didn't even for a moment flinch that there was a river between him and Shankara. He just ran across the river. And every step that he put on the river, a lotus bloomed. And he stepped on that river and he went from one limb and he crossed over. And the 14 lotuses that came across. And Shankara said, "From today, you will be called Padmapada." Padma, lotus, Pada, feet. One who stepped on lotuses when was called by his guru. And he needn't say anything else to the others who were there and had watched what had happened, because they had a different level of relationship with Shankara, even though they were disciples. And Padmapada, bhakti to his guru, was so different. So that is an example of what happens. You see, because Shankara is trying to teach, time passes you by. Time passes you by, life passes you by. So the question is, think, is there a greater purpose in life? And think, are you therefore performing each activity in sync with that thought? What's my purpose here? No, why am I here? I was born, I was raised, I got married, I got children, I'm working, So what is my life? It can't just be this that I've already done and I'm doing, Ask yourselves, what will take you to complete fulfillment? Key, right? Is it fame? Is it power? Is it position? Is it relationship? What can and what will truly make you happy? And he says, right, reflect on this. He says, only complete understanding of one's own self can make you truly happy. Not going outward, going inward, right? And he says, nahi nahi rakshati dukkhin karane, accomplish this before you hit the dead end, right? Now, I want you to think about this, right? When you're praying or when you're chanting or, in your meditation or whatever, suddenly God appears before you and he says, I am pleased with your devotion. Just like all the Rakshasas and all the Asuras, when they meditate with so much of discipline and tapasya, so much so that Brahma and Shiva appear before them and grant them, right? Tatastu. Like that. So you are doing, and suddenly God appears and he says, you are ready to come with me. I give you 7 days to live. 7 days to live. Right? I want you to think, what will you do in the 7 days? And more importantly, why will you do what you decide to do in the 7 days? Very important, huh? Because this will teach you or make you realize several things that you perhaps have not thought about. Right? So, Samprapte sannihite kale, when the appointed time of death comes, nahi nahi rakshati duprin karane. Your millions and billions, your massive houses, your 5, 6 different 7 cars, your fame, your position, your power, nothing will save you. Right? You got to think about that. Even Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, if you look at chapter 8, verse 6, he says, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyayet yante kale varam tam tame vaiti kaunteya sadha that bhava bhavitha. What does that mean? He says, nobody knows when their time comes. So you should be ready that if it comes and when it comes, you are ready to let go of everything at that point in time. As is Krishna, this is one of his, one of his Q&A sessions in the battlefield of Kurukshetra with Arjuna. He says, when that time comes and your life is going to be taken by Yama, that last thought that you have, that will decide your onward journey. So fill that thoughts all the time with thoughts of that eternal Parabrahman. Then you have no problem then, because whenever it comes, you are thinking, oh yes, straight, fast track. Otherwise, you have to go to the red customs zone and he's a Punarvijananam, again birth. So that's very, very relevant to this first verse, the chorus verse, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam. Samprapte sannihite kale. Even Krishna has made reference to that by saying, no one knows when that time will come, but be prepared. Even our Swami has said, you need 2 things in life. One is dhanya. Dhanya is, grains. Why do you need grains? Sustaining your body. Remember, you need this body to help you to cross this ocean. So look after it well. So he says, you need grains for the sustenance of the body, dhanya, and you need dhyana. See how beautifully he places the words. Dhanya and dhyana. Dhyana is, of course, meditation. Once that body is sustained at the right level where it is reverberating or vibrating at a level where it pierces through the conscious, the subconscious, and relates to the superconscious, then you can realize the God, Lord, and merge in his glory. Dhanya, dhyana. So are you saying I don't have to work, I just eat my dhanyas and do my dhyana, I should be okay? You have to do your duties, right? But what I'm saying is, don't get misled by all the aims and objectives and goals of life, because that is where you clearly misplace your loyalties to yourself. The first duty you owe is to yourself. Thank you for giving me this birth. Now I don't want another birth. I want to release myself from this birth cycle, birth and death. How? He's telling you. The second verse, right? This is the beginning of the Dwadasa Manjarika Stotram, verse 2 right up to verse 12. Okay? He says, Muda jahihi danagama trishnam, gurusat buddhim manasivi trishnam, yalla base nija karmophatam, vittam tena vinodaya chittam. Muda jahihi danagama trishnam, gurusat buddhim manasivi trishnam, yalla base nija karmophatam, vittam tena vinodaya chittam. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudamate, Samprapte Sannihite Kale, Nahi Nahi Rakshati Dukrin Karani. So he says, after the first word, why are you wasting your time learning all these rules and grammar and formulas and, acquiring all this earthly material knowledge? He says, move on. Muda. Fool, jahihi danagama trishnam, move away from this thirst of acquiring wealth, and material acquisitions, right? Guru Sat Buddhim Manasivi Trishnam, fill your thoughts, devote that mind to only thoughts of the reality, that one immutable reality, that is the Lord Supreme. Yella Bashe Nija Karmopatam, then be content with what comes as a result of your engagement in that thought process. Vittam Tena, with that, Vinodaya Chittam. Be content with what you get as a result. You see, entitlement is totally different from what you deserve. We may think we are entitled, but we may not be deserving of whatever we want, So move away. First, stop doing all these things to accumulate, worldly or earthly knowledge if it's not going to get you further in the afterlife. Right? Or at least in this life, how to live. You need that balance of worldly knowledge and spiritual knowledge in order for you to live a dharmic life. Right? That's why the Rig Veda says, Satyam Vada Dharmam Chara, enough. If you have that, finish. That's all you need. Always speak the truth, always do right actions. But we need more than that. Okay. So Shankara says, after you realize that all this worldly, earthly knowledge is not important, you should actually do this focus on that one permanent thing, that is the Lord, and constantly purpose. And of course, what you get as a result of that, be happy with it. Because only if you're happy, you can continue doing it. If you're unhappy, you won't be doing it, because your thought will be continuously unhappy thoughts. Or, this, that, everything. So he says, be content with it. Vittam Tena Vinodaya Chittam. Just be happy. It doesn't cost anything to be happy. Right? But it will cost everybody everything else if you're unhappy, because that energy is spread through that, unhappiness. So how can I relate this to real life? Well, you have the Purusharthas, the four Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Right? So you divide this into two. Dharma and Artha is one category. Kama and Moksha is another category. Right? So Dharma, Artha, one category. Kama, Moksha, another category. So what is Dharma? Right conduct. What is Artha? Material acquisition. So he's saying very clearly, do your Dharma properly, and it is verily through that very Dharma that you should accumulate whatever material possessions you get. And then of course he tells you in a later stotra what you should do with that which you accumulate. So, that's why it's a garland, because one flower connects to another flower, connects to another flower, right? So you must be able to see this thread of consistency that is going through and holding them as a single garland. Hence the word Dvadasa Manjarika Stotram, then Chaturdasha Manjarika Stotram, right? So he says, use Dharma, right conduct, right actions, right thinking, right speech, everything right, Dharma, to acquire Artha, material, wealth, possessions, acquisitions, right? Then the second category is Kama and Moksha. You cannot reach moksha if your karma, desire, lust is not in control. Your attraction, your desire, your maya, you're so entrenched in illusion that you cannot reach moksha. So he says, curtailing and curbing and limiting that karma will lead you to the path of moksha. Mokshayami. So dharma, artha, kama, moksha. They say, so should I not be asking for riches? Do you not think your creator knows what you need? And that way, when he gave you this life, he has already planned your journey and given you what you need to traverse. All the extras, all the peripherals that we are now living in is our own desire. Our own desire. He gives you a small house, you want a big house. He gives you a big house, you want a bigger house. He gives you a cycle, you want a bike. He gives you a bike, you want a car. He gives you a car, you want a better car. Like that, we have amassed all this as a result of our own exertions in our thoughts, in our words, in our actions. There's nothing to do with what the Creator intended. So these stanzas have the ability to reverse our journey and make us look inward, right? The story of Krishna and Sudama comes to mind. They were both childhood friends, very, very close. Now, in some places, Sudama is also known as Kushela or Kuchela. Anyway, so of course, at one point, Krishna had to leave and go to Mathura, and because he was there for a particular purpose. That journey started for him. And obviously he parted ways with Sudama, but they were very, very good close friends. And of course, they both grew up, and coming to Sudama. Sudama was married to a lady called Sushila, and they were very, very poor, very, very poor. And then one day Sushila said to him, "Why don't you go and see your friend Krishna? He's Mathura, he's king. Ask him for some help." He says, true friendship does not have any expectations. Remember, true friendship does not have any expectation. Now you just reflect on that. All your friends, do you have any expectations of that? I leave you to do the self-audit. Anyway, just Sudama wasn't very happy to do that, but because, his wife had requested, so he said, okay, I will go and I will see Krishna. So he packed, he knew Krishna liked this little sweet sesame seeds put together with honey and sugar, So he rolled 1 or 2 balls like that, and then he put it in his, towel or shawl, and then he went. And of course, Krishna was overjoyed when he saw him. He took him in, he washed his feet. That's why we say, Aditi Devo Bhava. Guest is like God. Treat them like God. We give them all the respects, right? Matru Devo Bhava, Pitru Devo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava, Aditi Devo Bhava. Because if you show honor and respect these 3 categories, straight away God will be present. God doesn't need any of this. He is not looking for any of this. He will say, you can't respect your mother, you can't honor your father, you can't respect your teacher, you can't do good for your guests. Why do you come to me then? Anyway, so Sudama went, he was looked after. Krishna gave him fresh clothes, treated him like very well, gave him good food, everything. And Sudama totally forgot. In Krishna's companionship, he forgot why he was there. Right? And a few days later, he said, okay, I have to go back. My life is there with my wife and children. So they hugged, they parted ways. And Krishna said, hey, Sudama, before you go, can you remove all these wealthy clothes and wear back what you came with and then go? Rukmani was there. She was shocked. She said, why, Bhagavan? Why have you done this? So anyway, Sudama came, he changed everything, and then he went back exactly how he came, right? So Rukmani asked Krishna later, why did you do that? You were the one who, gave him all this and made him feel comfortable. And then you told him this, and what will everybody think? He said, I have to do the right thing. I do not want people to think that I am partial to my friends and people who are close to me. I am the same with everybody. See, this is God talking to us. So if God can say he practices what he, what he preaches, treat everybody, Sarvam Vishnu Kutumbam. Sudama went back. By the time he went back, things had changed there. They had suddenly they'd come into a good fortune, and they had, the wife had invested once in something, and that came to fruition, and they lived happy because Krishna has already given him that. He knew why Sudama was coming, and the fact that Sudama didn't ask for it, this is just mind to mind, right? Krishna said, okay, when you go, when you reach, I have taken all this wealth from you when you're going, right? Because I have given it there already. So they lived happily ever after. So this, what this is coming to is for you to measure between need and greed. The famous saying, right? There is enough in the entire world for everybody's need, but there isn't enough in the entire universe for one man's greed. Muda jahihi danagama trishnam, this thirst for wealth. Move away from it. Fool, move away from it, he's saying, right? Entertain yourself with life's rewards. As Swami clearly says, right? Do good, be good, think good, speak good, feel good. Simple philosophy of life. Just let us look at that. We get what we deserve, not what we desire. What we deserve and what we desire are 2 different things. Shankara makes that very clear. What is your secret to happiness? What is your secret to happiness? Yours may be different from his may be different from hers may be different from theirs. You have to reflect on that. Because yours may be a simple sitting under flowing waters, in serene nature, and that's it. You're happy. You're vibrating at that level of happiness. For someone else, it may be something else. For some other people, it may be totally something else. Therefore, you have to reflect on what is going to give you happiness. So look at different ways in which, stop thinking only of acquiring wealth, money, fame, position. Think, how am I being useful in this life for his creation? Dhana, right? Dhana is wealth, should be used for dhana, which is charity. Dhana, dhana. Dhana should be used for dhana. So he says, move away from this thirst. If you have lots of it, give. Give to those who are less fortunate. In that giving, you will receive. Right? At a bhuloka level, the recipient is receiving that. But at a swaloka level, you will be receiving the good deeds of that. Okay, so that's the second one. Muda jahihi danagama trishnam, gurusat buddhim manasivi trishnam, yella bashe karmopatam vittam tena vinodaya chittam. So every time he repeats a verse, he goes back, Bhaja Govindam, therefore seek God. Bhaja Govindam, therefore serve God. Seek and serve God. For when that time comes, nothing else will save you. Okay, so we go to the verse number 3. This is also a very important verse, right? Because remember, he spoke about desire there, right? So he carries on with this. So it's a continuous linkage is given, a nexus is there between one and the other. Naristhana bharanabhidesham drishtva maga moha vesham etan mamsa vyasadi vikaram manasi vichintaya varam varam. Naristhana bharanabhidesham drishtva maga moha vesham etan mamsa vyasadi vikaram manasi vichintaya varam varam. Beautifully he says, do not get drowned in this delusion by going wild with passions and physical attractions. Control this desire of your physical senses, which is based on attachments, maha, vasanas, mohas, right? These things are nothing but the modification of flesh. Scientifically, you can process and analyze this, right? Fail not to remember, manasivi chintayam, think again and again, varam varam, that, what are you attracted to? Move away, Move away from things that you should not be looking at or people you should not be looking at with the wrong intentions, with impure intentions, right? Apart from your wife, Shankara says, everybody else is either a mother or a sister or a daughter. So once you come and look at with that sort of intention, then this verse has come to fruition in your life. Remember, only your wife, everybody else is either a mother, a sister, or a daughter. How beautiful, right? You have to contextualize it. Still talking about the Purusharthas. So second verse, I said to you, Dharma Artha. This one talks about Kama and Moksha. So he's telling you, curb, curtail, delimit, restrict yourself. But how? Well, because if you don't, it doesn't matter who you are, at what level of spiritual progress you are. The moment you give in to your desires, you go back to square one. Yeah, Vishwamitra and Menaka, you must remember that story, right? How he was getting so much of power. He was actually a king. But because he wanted to know so much about this, how come these rishis have this so much of power, Because he wanted Kamadhenu, right? And of course, he was not getting it. So he said, I want this power. And he began. And he rose through the ranks of rishis until he's a, Maharishi now. Same status with Vyasa and Shankara and all of this. Now, Lord Indra, the keeper of the heavens, he was getting very frightened. He said, wow, this Vishwamitra is becoming very, very powerful. So, of course, he was sending, he sent an Apsara called Menaka, embodiment of beauty, right, to go and disturb the tapasya of Vishwamitra. And she was successful in that, to that extent. And of course, his tapasya stopped. He went into normal Grihastha stage, from Vanapadishta and Sannyasa, he came back to Grihastha stage, spent some few years with her, and they got a daughter called Shakuntala. That stopped him, because otherwise he would have gone much higher in this world of spiritual, one-pointedness. So that's the story of how, doesn't matter who you are, the moment you give in to desire, right? There's no difference between saint and sinner. Desire is desire to everybody, right? Whether you're a priest or whether you are, a parishioner, it doesn't make a difference. Whether you're a bishop, reverend father, all these don't make a difference. Desire is desire. You're human. You'll succumb to it. So he says, control that. Don't succumb. Even Gita, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 64. Krishna again tells Arjuna, you have to keep your mind and senses under control. You keep your mind and senses under control by not getting attracted by this revulsion that is Maya, that is illusion. Go beyond and see what is that actually? Who is that actually? Why is that actually? What is that actually? Who is that actually? Why is that actually? And then you will realize, after you analyze that. See, here he's talking about physics and chemistry and a bit of biology as well, right? He's saying, look at things and then look at it again. You have to have that paradigm shift. And if you are in that box, you won't be able to think out of the box. You have to get out and look at it, and then you'll get your pathway. Krishna says, Ragadvesha viyuktaistu vishayan indrayascharan atmavasyar videtyatma prasadam adhigacchati. Ragadvesha viyuktaistu vishayan indrayascharan atmavasyar videtyatma prasadam adhigacchati. Beautifully saying, don't let your mind become deluded by all these temporary things, which just drags you into another path and leaves you there. And it's a long way for you to come back and continue this path, because by the time you come back, you've forgotten where you were, so you go back to square one. Vivekananda says beautifully, in the ocean of samsara, desires are like the crocodile. Kill them as soon as they surface in your mind. He says, desire your desire. D-E-hyphen-S-I-R-E. Desire your desire. Beautifully. Power. Vivekananda. He says, whenever, so somebody asked Vivekananda when he said that, Swami, how do we do that? He says, whenever a desire arises, you tackle that with your viveka or power of discrimination. That's what I just told you earlier, right? Who is that? What is that? Why is that? When you ask, and you inquire, and of course, you're not inquiring outwardly, externally, you're inquiring internally, right? Then you'll get the idea. Swami says, our own Swami has said, desires are a prison. They imprison your mind and make your body become a slave to your senses. And that's why he created a wonderful program called Sealing on Desires. He created it. Are we utilizing it to that end? Have we benefited from this program? Man is deluded by his unlimited senses, Swami says. He's living a life thinking he's a Bhogaraja. That means he's living in a world thinking, everything is comfort, comfort, comfort. But you do not know what discomfort awaits you when that time that comes. Remember, when matters matter, mind does not matter. When mind matters, matters don't matter. But what really matters is that which is beyond mind and matter. Beautiful. When matters matter, mind does not matter. When mind matters, matters don't matter. But what really matters is that which is beyond mind and matter. Oh, fantastic. So the next time you are driven by desire, analyze what is it that you are attracted to? Why? What? How? Where? Because at the end of the day, human body, physical attraction is inevitable, right? Realistically speaking, right? But if you start thinking from a scientific perspective, right? What am I looking at? A handsome man, a beautiful lady. No, I'm looking at 5 liters of blood, 206 bones, right? 600 muscles, loads of flesh and fat, perfectly packaged. At the end of the day, is this what I'm getting attracted to? What is it? Why is it? How is it? Then you will see, is this what is enchanting me to this level that I have to succumb? When you look at it so scientifically, that's why I said it's like a knife. It cuts into your ignorance and goes into your heart of worldliness to pull you out. It removes the tumor of this worldliness attachments, right? That's verse 3. Now, verse 4 is even more fantastic. Every verse, right? I wish I could talk about this for 3 hours, but still, 3 hours, either you guys will give up first or technology will give up. But anyway, the verse 4 is beautiful because it talks about life's uncertainty. So understand, he says, Nalini dalagata jalamati taralam. Nalini dalagata jalamati taralam. Tatva jivita atisaya chapalam. Vidhi vyadi abhimana grastam. Lokam shokam hatam cha samastam. Nalini dalagata jalamati taralam. Tatva jivitam atishaya chapalam. Vidhi vyadi abhimana grastam. Lokam shokam hatam cha samastam. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudamate, Samprapte Sanihite Kale, Nahi Nahi Rakshati Dukrin Karani. Nalini Dalagata Jalam Atitaralam. Sometimes you get up and you go to your garden behind your house, or you in front of your house, you may have trees or what. Have you seen in the morning, early morning hours, the dew on the leaves, the droplets? He's saying the life of a person is as uncertain as these raindrops trembling on the leaves. That is how beautifully your life is precariously hanging on to something. At any moment, that drop of water can fall off the leaf. So is your life. Know that the whole world remains at this level of uncertainty. They are prey to disease, prey to ego, prey to grief, prey to sorrow. So knowing that everything is uncertain, why are you looking and going for something that you know is temporary? You should actually be looking for something that is more permanent. The joys of life are unstable. It's just like the water drop. Nalini dalagata jalamati taralam. Tatvat jivita asya. So your life is the same. The beauty is, it is exactly the same. Because you are treading this path just like the precarious nature of that drop of water. At any time it can fall, right? So he says, unceasing desire. See, all this he's talking about desire. The desire, your desire, right? Live each day. Live it well. Live it happy. Live it as though it was your last. If you are born the next day, give thanks. Oh God, I've been given one more day. Live in the same way, right? Because we are always making plans. Next Friday, next month, in 3 months' time. Procrastinating. Right? Says you should live each day as if it were your last, because blessings can come to you in different ways. Right? A story comes to my mind here. Right? Rama and Lakshmana during the Vanavasa. Right? They were looking for some food, and they were walking for very long, when at a distance they saw a small hut. In that hut there was a little candlelight burning, so that sort of gave them the way. They reached there and they found out there were two very old people living there, and all that they had as a possession was a very skinny, scrawny cow. And this cow gives them 1 cup of milk every day, and it is that milk that half is taken by the man, half is taken by the lady, and they are surviving. So when Rama and Lakshmana knocked on the door and says, Bhiksham Dehi, give us, if you have anything, please. Bhiksham, alms, food, whatever. The lady looked at the man looked at the lady, and they both, just exchanging looks, because this is the power of thoughts. When you are synchronized at that level of thoughtlessness, that means you are completely in each other's thoughts. She understood. He said, give our cup of milk to both of them. So the lady went inside and took out the cup and said, this is all we have, because our cow only gives us 1 cup. I take half, you take half. Today, it will be our great pleasure if you and the other person can take this. So Rama had half. He gave Lakshmana half. Actually, he gave Lakshmana half first. And then he had half. And then they said, it's getting dark. Do you mind if we rest for a while before we go? She said, okay. The lady and the man said, okay. Now, as the man, as they were leaving, right, a couple of hours later, Rama said, may your cow die. And he left. Now, Lakshmana was really, thinking, what? These people have helped us, and the only thing that keeps them alive is the cow. And the cow keeps them, alive, gives them sustenance, 1 cup of milk. How can you, this is Lakshmana's thoughts. He never ever said anything, because that is, that is his relationship. But he couldn't keep it with that. At some point he said, Brata, you are always known as a Dharma Prabhu. How could you kill the only thing that was keeping them alive? And that's when Rama told Lakshmana, they are fit to go to the feet of Govinda. The only thing that was standing in their way is the cow, because it was giving them a cup of milk every day and they were drinking that to keep alive. When the cow goes, their path is clear. See? This is called Pratipaksha Bhavana. Pratipaksha Bhavana, right? That means the uncertainty alone is certain. So only if you are treading the path, in the path of Tyaga and Vairagya, right? Tyaga is sacrifice, Vairagya is detachment or perseverance, sense of determination. Then someone will come and help you, take you further, continue your path. Someone, don't question who. Someone will come. That is not your worry. Your worry is, I have to do what I have to do. That person will come at the right time. So don't procrastinate. Whatever you have to do it today. Balance yourself in the thought is now and here. Now and here. The power of now is greater. Swami's often said this expression, right? The past is history. The future is mystery. Present is the gift. So gift has been given to you. Live it, right? Mental maturity is the only way to reduce uncertainty, Swami has said. That's why Swami always says, love my uncertainty. Beautiful. Love my uncertainty. Mental maturity is the only way to reduce uncertainty. What else do we need? Right? Vivekananda also said, take up one idea. Make that one idea your entire life and live that idea. Let the brain, let the body, let the muscles, let the nerves, let every part of your body vibrate with that one thought. That one thought at the end of the day should reach him. What did Lord Buddha say? Buddha said, Sarvam dukham dukham, sarvam shanikam shanikam. Everything is misery, misery, everything is temporary, temporary, momentary, shanikam. And then he says, this is not my life. I want to do something else. And then he goes into, meditation, and 12 years later he comes out enlightened, right? So these 4 verses clearly tell you in a connecting link how you should first focus on the right thing. Secondly, you should be looking at reducing your desire, or if you've got wealth, to give it properly, Because as I said to you, at some point, someone will come and to fulfill that journey. You see, Sudama came. He never asked, but when he went, he got. Similarly, right, I will end with this story where Shankara once went with a begging bowl, Bhiksham Dehi, Bhiksham Dehi. So he went to this hut. He was barely about 8 years old, He went to this hut. Again, there was a very old man and a very old lady there. And he said, Bhiksham Dehi me, Bhiksham Dehi me. So the lady came out and she saw this young Brahmin boy asking for alms. She went back and she told her husband. He said, see, whatever we have, give. So she looked in the basket where they keep, some grains and whatnot. There was one amla, gooseberry left in that basket. So she goes to her husband and says, we don't have anything, only this one amla, we have one gooseberry. He says, give that. But that was going to be their food for that day, right? Half. So he goes and she gives. And she says, this is all we have, but please have this. It will mean a lot to us for you to have this. I mean, Shankara at that young age, he looked at the sincerity and the mental magnanimity of this woman, and he said, oh my God. And then he burst forth, Angam Hare Pulaga Bhushanam Ashrayanti Bringanganeha Mukula Bhavanam Taranam Angi Krita Vibhutira Pangalila Bhangalyadastu Mama Mangala Devataha. Oh, when he said that, the heavens opened and Lakshmi came and said, God. And raining, it was then raining in golden gooseberries. Remember, I said to you, you don't worry. At the time when you are most pushed with your trials and tribulations, continue to do what you have to do in His name. And someone from somewhere will come to take you that little bit further. And this has been proven time and again in all our, in Vedas it is said, in the Itihasas, Itihi Hasam, this is how it has happened, right? So why do we worry? Because worry is like a rocking chair. It will give you something to do. It won't take you anywhere. So be focused. Okay. So for this week, we've looked at 4 verses. The main verse, which is Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Bhunamate, Samprapte, Sannihite Kale, Nahi Nahi Rakshati Duprinkarane. And then I looked at verse 2, verse 3, verse 4. From next week onwards, I will look at 3 verses. So we have 9 more weeks. 3 verses each week. At the end of the 10th week, we would have finished all 31 verses, and hopefully your life would have improved, right? What will happen is now they will send you, or they will send the materials. I've given the shlokas, the meanings, and I've given you some questions for each stanza, so you can reflect on that and you can see how you can relate to these sessions, right? I mean, there must be some, information must lead to transformation. Otherwise, it is futile. It's what Swami says, empty tin cells. If there is no transformation as a result of this information, then what you are is pure tinsel, right? So reflect on those questions. And I've also put the book on there, like Swami's Summer Showers in Vrindavan, 1973, where he completely focused on Bhaja Govindam. So you can read the chapters. I've given reference to which chapters you should read. So for this week is chapters 1 to 3. And then I've given, 6 or 8 questions for each of the stanzas, totally, 2 questions for 1, 2 questions for 2, questions for 3, 2 questions for 4. So you have 8 questions to reflect, right? So I'm going to stop there now, and I'm going to ask if you have any questions for me, and I will try and answer them, with His grace to the best of my ability.